Hey everyone, welcome back to the American Justice Podcast Q&A edition for episode 10. We hope everybody's doing well. We hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Scott, how's everything going on your side of Dallas?
It is going well, but I just realized we have reached the precipice that we have been anticipating all the way up to all these different episodes. We are at episode 10. What are we going to call it?
You know, I have no idea. I'm out of Star Wars references, man. I don't know what to do.
I know that.
Rogue One.
I thought
Rogue One.
I thought you were gonna study all of the what was it, 007, the James Bonds.
Oh man, you know, I'm not into James Bond. I never have been. That was one of those things. I think my grandfather and my father are really into. I wasn't. I was never into James Bond. I was never really big into John Wayne either. I don't think I've ever seen a John Wayne movie.
Really, I haven't either.
So that does that take away my man card? I don't know. I also have a very unique way of drinking tea, a very un-Texan way of drinking tea. I drink unsweet tea, which is very un-Texan.
Yeah, how's that?
And then for the most part, instead of ice cubes, I put frozen peach slices in the tea to give it a little bit of flavor. And then after the tea is all said and done, the peach slices have thawed, and you have a tasty little treat at the end.
That doesn't sound like a bad idea, but why is that un-Texan? Is that not something we do in Texas?
Texas is really big on their sweet tea. We're talking one pitcher of tea equals half a bag of sugar.
That's true.
It's not my thing. It was my thing growing up. I wasn't the one making the tea, and as I've gotten older, I prefer unsweet tea. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, that's true. It is definitely. I've actually seen them like making the sweet tea at like Whataburger and McDonald's and stuff. And when you see how much sugar they put in there, it definitely makes you never want to drink it again.
No, it's crazy. Now back when I did drink sweet tea, I want to say Chicken Express. I don't know where Chicken Express is based out of, or I know they're here in Texas. I know I've seen a lot of them in the South. I don't know if they're all over the country. I don't think they are, but they had some monster sweet tea. We're talking. Extra large sweet tea came with a side of diabetes, man. It's really bad.
That is true. And I think they sell it by the gallon too, don't they?
They do. They do sell it by the gallon, and people just pop a straw in that gallon and drive down the road sucking on it. So more power to them, man. Not necessarily my thing.
I like that. The side of diabetes. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, not my thing. But things are starting to pick up around here. The office is open back up, so I'm knee deep in the art industry again, getting art shipments going all over the country. But I'm doing it from home. I'm not having to go into the office or anything. So
I was gonna say you're like kind of halfway back. Like you're doing your job.
Yeah.
But you're at home, so that's good.
The drivers are scooting all over the country, but I'm not. I'm not even in the office here in Dallas. I'm doing it all from home. My wife's doing her part of it from home. We work for the same place. We work together. People think that's weird, but we actually spend 24 hours a day in each other's presence, and we don't try to kill each other. It's an amazing thing.
That shows that it's a good relationship.
It is. It's really good. Well, I've got 4 questions today regarding episode 10.
Nice.
4 questions. None of these were phone questions. These are all email questions.
I feel like last week when we had a phone question and we told people, hey, here's our phone number, give us a call, that we were going to get all kinds of phone questions, but we didn't. No, we just got YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that.
Hey, we play the hand that's dealt, man.
That's true.
That's what we do. That's what we do here at the American Justice Podcast. That's our theme. Play the hand that's dealt.
That's right. We're not going to beg people to call us. But come on, people, please call us. Okay, go ahead.
You know what you do is you do the opposite. It's like child psychology.
Yes.
Don't you dare call us. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Don't you call us.
Don't you dare call 972-942-0444 and leave a message.
Be the last mistake you ever make.
That's right. See if we ever use your question on the air. Of course we will.
Right. All right. Let's start out with question one here. This first question comes from Ricky from Kansas City, Kansas. Not Kansas City, Missouri.
No.
Kansas City, Kansas.
Right over the river.
Not quite as cool as Kansas City, Missouri side of Kansas City. My opinion.
I was right though, right? It's a river that separates them, right?
I believe. I believe you're right.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time in both cities. I like the Missouri part better.
Okay. I just want to make sure because, there's Texarkana, Texas and Texarkana,
Right.
Arkansas, and I don't think they're separated by a river, but I was remembering because I've been to Kansas City one time, and it seems like I had this vague memory of them being separated by a river, so I just want to make sure I wasn't wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, not a bad place.
Okay.
Not a bad place. Okay, here we go.
I wonder if anybody's mad that we comment about their city when they call. It's like we just dig on their city when they call, or it's a good city, It's like.
Well, if there is anybody out there that doesn't like it when I talk about their city, because I have been everywhere in the United States, multiple times. And if you don't like what I say about your city, feel free to call us at 972-942-0444 and make a comment.
And tell us all about it.
Tell us all about it. We'll play your comment on the air as long as you give us permission to use your voice.
That's right.
All right. Ricky from Kansas City, Kansas, asks, well, first of all, he says, and then he asks,
okay.
Ranger Collins said that Brandon was at Alex's house between 11 and 11:15. And I thought you said, he's pointing fingers at you now, I thought you said that was the time that he actually got there.
That was the question, or that was the statement?
I think it was a statement with a question mark at the end.
Oh, okay, I see. Hey, we'll take questions in the form of a statement any day.
Right.
So yes, that is exactly correct, and that's very astute of you to pick up on that. Basically, Brandon tells Ranger Collins that he got over to Alex's house between 11 and 11:15, and then you see that the toll record, and I think we actually bring it up. I don't remember if we brought it up in this episode or if we bring it up in the next episode, but the toll records actually show at 11:13 that Brandon was exiting the toll right by Alex's house. So that shows that is when he got there. But the problem is that, Brandon is saying that he's there between 11 and 11:15, and then the toll records show that he's exiting at 11:13, so that shows that that's the time that he got there. But Ranger Collins is trying to make it out like he's just lied to him. And, I think Ranger Collins was more focused on the, you said you left the Heath house at 8 o'clock, but we saw, we have a neighbor that says that you were there between 10 and 11. So he's thinking to himself, okay, I think maybe he got it in his mind that Brandon was at the Heath house the whole time between 10 and 11. So he's sitting there thinking, well, wait a second, how do you get to Alex's house at 11 if you're at the Heath house, right? So what actually happened, though, was that he did get to Alex's house at 11:13, and the reason is because he just picked up Robert at Denny's between 10:50 and 11 p.m. So they literally met in the parking lot. Robert got in his truck and they left. There was no time there. So they picked him up at between 10:50 and 11 p.m., headed over to Alex's house, exited at 11:13. So the time that Brandon was talking about there was absolutely correct. And then they spent a few minutes getting ready so they could get down to the club. They stayed at the club for an hour and a half or 2 hours, took Alex home, and then went back to ACU. So all of the times that even as much as Brandon was kind of mistaken about the times, it was really only the time that he left the Heath house that he was mistaken about. Everything else he was able to reference, like, okay, I wanted to get to the club by 12 because that's when the dance off, started. So we had to have gotten to Alex's house about 11 to 11:15, et cetera, et cetera. So he had stuff to reference off of. The thing he didn't have to reference off of was what time he left the Heath house. And that's basically just because, he spent time there dealing with his animals and all of that stuff. So time just got away from him. He just didn't really pay much attention to it. So there was nothing to tie that time to it. So, yeah. So basically, Ricky's exactly right. That Brandon said he got there between 11 and 11:15, and he did. So, like I said, I think it was just Ranger Collins that was focusing on the wrong thing. He was focusing on the time that he was at the Heath house and not focusing on, the rest of the night.
Okay. Ricky from Kansas City, thank you very much for your question comment. Your question statement.
Exactly. Good job, Ricky.
All right. Thanks, Ricky. All right. Question number 2 comes from Alan in Dallas.
Alan.
Local guy here.
Yes.
Okay. He has, it looks like, 2 questions in one question.
So we have a question statement and we have 2 questions in one. Okay.
We have 2 questions in a question. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Alan from Dallas says, my question for this week, that's a statement, period. Norma Woodruff had someone else's hair in her hand. Was it identified as Brandon's or as anyone's?
That is a really good question. And one of the things that we will get into when we talk about the crime scene during the trial, specifically when we start talking about the medical examiner's testimony, is that the hair that was in Norma's right hand was not like any other hairs that were in her left hand or that they found anywhere else. And the problem with it, so one would assume, I don't want to get into it too much because we'll talk about it later episodes, but basically, Norma was found kind of slunched over with her left hand behind her head. So the blood and everything had dried. So when they pulled her hand away, there was a lot of like her own hair. But the right hand, there was just a couple hairs in her right hand, and they were not hers. So everybody was assuming, okay, that must have been the killer's because they were long blonde hairs. At the time, Brandon had short, spiky black hair. He actually had his hair dyed black for a play at Abilene Christian. So no, they were definitely not Brandon's. But the problem is that when they got to the medical examiner's office, they took all of the hairs, left hand and right hand, and mixed them together in the same bag. So, and it's unfortunate because the medical examiner even makes a note on the form when she's filling out the autopsy that says hairs in right hand, and then it says test ? Like, are we going to test these? They decided not to test them, and like I said, they ended up mixing them with the other hairs that were in her other hand. So there's actually, and we'll get into this as well when we get into the post-conviction relief, there's actually been a motion and a testing of some hairs, but the problem is that they were not able to specify which hairs they wanted. So basically they just went in and they have a bag of 500 hairs, and they just took one out and tested it. So we'll get into that when we get in, like I said, when we get into the medical examiner's testimony. But no, they were not able to test the hairs, and but even the just appearance of them was completely different than Brandon's. Like I said, his was dyed black at the time, and it was real short, like it was real spiky. And then the hairs that were found were long blonde hairs.
So you're telling me that the investigators found a lot of different hairs from possibly a lot of different sources, and when they were collecting them, they all stuck them together in the same bag, like it didn't make a difference. Well, like maybe that wasn't something that was taught day one at criminal investigating school or something like that. That you're saying mistakes were made.
Yes, and like I said, when we get to the trial, when we get into that testimony, let's just say that's not the only mistake that was made.
You're right, right. So mistakes were made by, I mean, from everyone. You know, when you're watching these interview, I don't know if anyone on here watches our YouTube channel, but if you do listen to this podcast on the YouTube channel, there are actually the videos from the interrogation rooms that you're listening to these interrogations on the podcast. But if you watch us on YouTube, we're playing the actual video.
Right.
And as far as the ones doing the interviewing, I mean, it's just a smorgasbord of bald spots. So you're saying a lot of people who didn't have a lot of experience having hair themselves stuck hair into bags and just shook them all up and sent them off to the examiner. I
Right.
get it.
And you know, we talk about different things that could, like we talked about the timeline only being 14 minutes, and that's something that can exonerate Brandon. We talk about if we had the phone records and we knew where that 941 call, where he was during that 941 call, that would completely exonerate him. This is another one of those things that if we were able to go into the bag of hair and look and see which one doesn't look like all the rest, and pull that specific one out and test it, that we would be able to find out whose hair that was. But the courts are not allowing that.
Man, we should have let a group of jealous housewives do this investigation because they know when somebody's hair is not their own. I can't tell you the number of times that's happened to me over the years. Whose hair is that on your sleeve? That's not your hair. That's not my hair. Whose hair is that on that jacket? That jacket you haven't worn in 5 years that's been hanging on the closet. Whose hair is that? That's not my hair.
Yes, that's I do not have any experience with that, but I'll take your word for it.
Yes, please take my word for it. All right, Alan from Dallas, thank you very much for your question. I hope we answered it okay. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, have a word from our sponsors, and we will come back for questions 3 and 4. Stick tight.
All righty.
C. Derick Miller is an author, producer, and gonzo journalist from the conservative community of Greenville, Texas. Sam Cloud Miller is a graphic artist and a liberal civil rights activist from Austin, Texas. Combine those two and what do you have? Magic. Recorded in the Bishop Arts District of Dallas, it's a podcast that is sure to never disappoint. They talk about books, film, music, today's topics, and life in general. Even though they may disagree on the topics from time to time, they'll always kiss and make up. It's a practice that America needs to relearn, don't you think? No filters, no scripts, and no schedule. Catch the Butterflies Make Me Angry podcast on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Peace to the peaceful, truth to the masses, hell to the tyrants. Get all the details at cderickmiller.com.
So, yeah. Welcome back to the American Justice Podcast. Episode 10 Q&A, The Spy Who Loved Me. That just doesn't sound right.
You just can't even say it with a straight face. You're just like, I can't do it, Scott. I just can't do it.
I don't have the power.
Well, I mean, the other resort is you're just going to have to start making up Star Wars names and not the Black Jedi.
Not the Black Jedi.
No. Sam Jackson does not get his own movie.
Right. Actually, they're saying he might. They're saying he might. Spoiler territory. He died in episode 3, but Samuel Jackson has come out and said maybe I didn't. So Lucasfilm is like, you know what? Maybe you didn't. You can't argue. You can't argue with Sam Jackson.
No, you cannot. And those, those Jedis, they're resilient. So
they are. I would love to go see a Star Wars movie that's just about Sam Jackson's character, directed by Quentin Tarantino. I would love.
Oh God.
I would love to see it.
Does that look like my lightsaber? Does the lightsaber say "bad mother"? Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I was actually told that his lightsaber did have that written on there somewhere.
That would be awesome.
Let's jump to the third question here. This question has nothing to do with Sam Jackson. Jennifer from Newport News, Virginia. Virginia is
Newport
for
News.
lovers. The Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh, yes. And Newport News.
Newport News.
That's so my question is, though, if it's Newport News, what do they call the newspaper? Is it the Newport News?
That's, I've never looked that up. Although I have been curious. I'm going to take another drink of my unsweet tea here.
Newport
I can hear
News.
the true Texans just shaking in their boots right now.
True Newport News.
The Newport News.
It's like
Okay.
Gary Gnu with the GNU News.
No gnu's is good gnu's.
That's right. I'm so glad I'm not the only one that gets those references.
Right, the Great Space Coaster.
Yes,
That's what that. Yes, that's what that. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Heck yeah. I have a memory. It comes and goes at times, but I do.
See, all
do
the
have
people that I work with are so much younger than me. They don't get when I say stuff like that. Drives me nuts.
My office is the same way too. I work in an office full of girls in their mid to late 20s, and they don't get half the references that I make. But I've come to accept it. It's fine because I don't get half the references they make either.
Right. Well, what drives me crazy is they'll say stuff like, I'll reference like, I don't know, Dragnet or, something that was on in the 60s, like before I was even born. And they'll think that I was alive when all that was going on. They're like, did you watch that when it was on? And I was like, dude, how old do you think I am? Like, I know I'm older than you, but I'm not that old.
Like I'll be listening to The Doors and they're like, "Oh my God, you're old," and I'm like, Jim Morrison died the year I was born. All right, don't take me that far back.
Right. I always tell them, I say, it doesn't mean I'm old. It just means that I have culture.
Right. Exactly. I was lucky enough to have people in my life who taught me the cool things from their generation, and I took that into mine and spread that to my children as well. Most of them hate it, but I gave them the opportunity to like it.
Oh man, I love when I'm like, we're getting obviously off the subject here, but I love it when I get on like YouTube and stuff and you see some of these like, 12, 13, 14-year-olds doing like Doors or Led Zeppelin or, stuff like that. Like that's all, like you have good parents.
Really. Yeah, you really do. Okay. So Jennifer okay, screw that trip down memory lane. Here's Jennifer from Newport News, Virginia. She asks both, probably.
Her question statement is,
her section of the internet reads, Colin said multiple times that it wasn't a break-in. How did that make Brandon look guilty? If one of my son's friends came to the door, I would let him in without question. Curious to the reasoning.
That really goes back to just one of those things where I believe, again, this is my opinion, that they're molding things and molding evidence to make it look like it was Brandon, right? So if they say, for example, the doors were locked, like when Todd got there and checked all the doors and everything, and they were all locked, so he had to break in through a window. So they're thinking to themselves, okay, well, this must be somebody that had a key. But then you realize, well, wait a second, the door was locked with one of those little twist turns, twist lock. So somebody just basically twisted the lock and then shut the door. Anybody could have done that, but they molded it to look like, oh, well, it must be somebody that was comfortable there. It must be somebody that had a key or, someone that lived there or whatever. So this was one of those things that the fact that there wasn't a break-in, there was no windows broken or anything like that, which basically just means that the killer or killers got in somehow without breaking in. That doesn't mean that it had to be like a family member. It doesn't mean, if somebody comes to my door, and even if it's an acquaintance, even if it's somebody that I don't really hang out with every day, but I know them, I've seen them at work or whatever, and, stuff like that. I'm going to open the door and say, hey, what's going on? What can I do for you? So I think it's one of those things where I agree with Ranger Collins that it probably was somebody that the Woodruffs knew. I don't agree with him that it had to be somebody that they knew intimately. You know, let's say, for example, it was one of the, Norma volunteered with Equus, right? So let's just say it was one of the Equus volunteers that came over. You know, she's met him a few times and she's talked to him and stuff like that. So when they come to the door, she's not going to just not open the door, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a family member or that they're real close or whatever. So, you know, if it was somebody like, you know, Todd Williams or Ron Merritt or Mike Etherington or whoever.
The barn guy.
The barn guy. I mean, it could, anybody that they knew or had met before, they're probably going to open the door. I mean, it seems like it would be kind of rude if they come to the door and then you're just talking through the door, even though you have a established relationship with that person. So, you know, like I said, I agree with Ranger Collins that it probably was somebody that they had at least met before and knew, even if it was on a casual basis. So, but of course, as you saw in the interrogation video, Ranger Collins makes it out like, you know, well, I'll tell you right now, Brandon, it wasn't a break-in. We know it wasn't a break-in, you know, and it's like, okay, well, how does that point to Brandon any more than it points to anyone else that the Woodruffs had ever met? So, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things that, again, I think Ranger Collins and Terry Jones and all those guys were kind of molding the evidence to fit. Okay, well, if the evidence is this way and it fits Brandon, then that shows that Brandon's guilty. Well, there's a lot of things that could fit Brandon that could fit an infinite amount of other people as well. So, you know what I mean? Like it seems like they just weren't looking at it objectively. And again, that's just my opinion.
Right. And I today I looked for the very first time at the address of the crime scene and plotted it on a map. And one of my duties, I said duties. One of my duties at the Hunt County Sheriff's Department all these many moons ago was that I plotted and tracked criminal statistics for Hunt County and turned them over to Austin, so Austin could, you know, see how crappy our statistics were. But as far as a county map goes, that area that they lived was a hot spot for thefts, burglaries, assaults. I mean, just that entire neighborhood, that entire area was one giant red dot. So it's also one of the furthest points in the county. It's right on the Hunt County Rockwall County line. It's right on the county line. Which something else I noticed as I'm not sure if this is, I heard this was a word once, but I'm not sure it's a word. I'd have to look it up. But a statistician is someone who studies statistics. That's a lot of stuff words right there, and it's really difficult to say. But a statistician, one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of the crime in Hunt County is along the edges of the county, and that's because the sheriff's department is right in the middle of that county, and it takes the deputies the longest to respond.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's just the natural way of things, or if that's a criminal being a criminal, if they're thinking about this. But those housing additions out there are just a hot spot for burglaries and assaults. I saw it month after month for a couple of years doing that job. So yeah, the possibilities of it being anyone with ill intent at that door, the possibilities were endless.
Right.
So,
and you also got to, you got to think about it this way. Does it point to somebody that was, does it point to somebody that they knew? Yes. Does it necessarily mean that? I mean, I've opened the door for people that knock on the door and you look out the little peephole and you see that it's a friendlier looking person. So you open the door and how can I help you? And the next thing you know, you have a gun stuck in your face. The door's already open. So no, it's not going to be a break-in if that happens. So is it a possibility that it was somebody that they didn't know? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not. But is it likely that it was somebody is it likely that it's anybody that they knew? Yes.
That is true. I mean, I live in a completely gated community. If you make it to my door, then you're doing something half right. Still, behind the door, if I look through, I don't have a peephole. I have like a peep monitor. I can stand like way back and see who's standing outside my door, and I more than likely have a Beretta 9mm behind my back if I don't recognize the person. So it's all part of living in Dallas. But
well, I mean, I think a lot of people now, they have, obviously it would have been nice if they had the technology back then, but I think a lot of people these days have the Ring doorbells and stuff like that, so you can see who it is and even talk to them. Say, yes, can I help you? Who are you? What do you want? So.
Could you move a little bit to the right? You're not quite in my line of fire. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. You're not nice.
I have a safe sticking out of the second floor window. I have to cut this rope. Hold on.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The Acme doorbell.
I was gonna say like Roadrunner style.
Right. All right, Jennifer from Newport News, Virginia. Thank you, Virginia. No Virginia's is good Virginia's.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Oh wait.
Yes. It's the strangest thing. I had my phone silenced, but I have a Galaxy Watch on, and it started ringing. Go figure. Domino's Pizza from somewhere Domino's Pizza from El Paso, Texas, just tried to call me. I don't think they're going to get their pizza to me in 30 minutes or less.
Oh, dude, you should have totally gone on there and said like, hey, man, you guys were supposed to be here like 12 hours ago.
Where are you?
Where are you?
Jeez. I think that's a new thing. I think that's the new scam caller thing is they take the numbers that belong to other people. When they try to call you, you think it's from somewhere else.
I think it's someone else. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That was Jennifer from Newport News, Virginia. I'll say Virginia correctly this time. Thank you very much for your question. Keep listening. Ask again. Use the phone number. Do you remember what the phone number is? That phone number is 972-942-0444. You can call us and ask us questions, and make sure you give us permission.
And you don't even have to talk to anybody. It's just a voicemail.
It's just a voicemail. You don't have to interact. You can tell us if you don't like it when I make fun of where you live. I do praise some people's residences, though. I do praise them from time to time. Kansas City, Kansas is not one of them. Just for the record.
Oh my.
All right.
Okay.
Our final question of the day. Now we need some theme music for Debbie from Plano. Debbie from Plano needs her own theme music. We should have the Debbie from Plano section of the show. It could be like Debbie from Plano.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. Debbie from Plano asks, weekly, but she asks, was anyone other than Brandon asked to give a DNA sample? Did they find any DNA at the crime scene that they couldn't account for?
Well, that would be assuming that they found any DNA, or that they checked for any DNA. They did a buccal swab for Brandon and Charla, which is funny because that was the two people that they knew had been in there. But I guess they were just checking to make sure, okay, well, we found DNA. It's Brandon. Okay, good. It's Charla. Okay, good. But if it's not Brandon, Charla, Dennis, or Norma, then they're going to start looking. So that was kind of the thinking behind that. However, I don't believe they found, I don't think they really checked anything for DNA, because I know that they did take swabs in the bathroom because the luminol alerted on that. But then when they got it back to the lab, they realized that it wasn't blood. It was just bleach or cleaning products. The thing that when I hired the crime scene reconstructionist, one of the things that we talked about was why they didn't take DNA samples of all of the blood that was dripping to the bathroom. Because you got to think about, Norma was stabbed 5 times and Dennis was stabbed 9. So there's a lot of knife fighting going on here, you would think, especially since Norma had a cut on her hand and stuff. So there was a struggle, even though Ranger Collins says there wasn't a struggle. But there was a struggle, at least with Norma. And so you would think that if they tested all of the drops of blood, that it's very possible. I forget what the percentage is, but in a large percentage, whenever there's a struggle with a knife, the person that is the aggressor usually ends up cutting themselves because, when blood gets all over knives, they just get slippery, and so they end up cutting themselves. So there's a really good chance that there could have been the perpetrator's blood as one of those drip marks all the way going to the bathroom. So you would think, okay, well, let me guess. They tested every single drop of blood. You would be wrong. They did not. It just didn't seem, I don't know. It's hard to say because at that point in the investigation, like the first day or two, I don't think that they had formed Brandon as a suspect yet. I don't even think they formed Brandon as a suspect until they talked to Randall Lunds. But so it just seems like instead of not testing it because they thought they already had their guy, it seemed like they didn't test it just because they were inept.
No.
I know. Hard to imagine that this set of Hunt County Sheriff's Office being like that.
Oh yeah, never would have guessed.
And I always tell people when I'm talking to them in person, I always say, just wait until we get to the trial, because when we go in the trial, it's going to be many episodes. It'll probably take us 8 to 10 episodes to cover the trial. But the reason for that is because we're going to talk about pretty much anybody that testified that had any kind of substantive information to give, right? So we're going to talk about the medical examiner's testimony. We're going to talk about how they did their autopsy, and we're going to talk about the detectives and stuff that they did and shouldn't have done, and the crime scene and stuff like that. So it's going to take us a while to get through that. But that's what I always tell people. Just wait till we get to the trial, because then that's when we're really going to start exposing all of the mistakes and all of the just the stuff that they should have done that they didn't do. I don't know if it's just inexperience or if it was just apathy or if they just, I really don't know what it was, but it was a horrible job processing this crime scene.
Excellent. All right. Debbie from Plano, once again, thank you for your question. Thank you for listening. We look forward to hearing your question next week. We'll try and have some theme music by then. Hey, also, between now and then, is there any way to get like a sped up version of the crime scene video with the Benny Hill music playing behind it?
I will work on that for you.
I don't know why I thought of that. I don't know why I think of half the things I think of, but I just did.
Nobody does, Chad.
So that does it for our episode 10 Q&A. We thank everybody for watching, listening, however you decide to interact with this podcast. Scott, what's episode 11 going to be like?
Well, episode 11, we're talking about the arrest warrant. And this is, this is where we're starting to get into that narrative that Ranger Collins is forming to take evidence that could be fitting many different people, and how he's basically lying to the judge and leaving things out. I mean, there's such thing as lie by omission, right? You're leaving things out that make Brandon look innocent. he's misrepresenting facts. There's, so we'll talk all about the arrest warrant. We'll talk all about how he came to the conclusions. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe, did you not give us the Ranger Sergeant Collins top 10 list?
The Ranger Sergeant Collins top 10 list. Yes,
right.
Yes, I did.
So we'll go through all of that, and we'll see what the reasons are that Ranger Collins had for arresting Brandon.
Right.
Well, Your Honor, he did it, and you can trust me because I have a cowboy hat.
Just try. And a big belt buckle.
And a big belt buckle with a steering wheel on it.
Yep.
He's driving me nuts.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for checking us out this week. We look forward to seeing you all again next week. Remember, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. But you can also watch these episodes on YouTube. Sometimes you get an added little treat. You get a video instead of just hearing it. And for the time being, right now, the first 100 subscribers to our YouTube channel goes into a drawing for a $500 Visa gift card. And that every subscription we get will send me to speech therapy classes.
I was going to say, easy for you to say.
No, it's not easy for me to say. You will go into a drawing for a $500 Visa gift card. So go to YouTube, click the subscribe button, click the little bell icon that lets you know.
And don't forget to message us on Facebook to let us know that you did that, because I don't think you can look and see who your subscribers are. Yep.
So I believe that's it. I know if you want to know more about the Brandon Woodruff case, you can go to freebrandon.org to find out more information on the Brandon Woodruff case and find out more about the upcoming documentary. I think that's it, Scott. That's all I have. Other than the tagline, which I have moved up on my list. I have highlighted. I think I can say it this week.
Can you? Okay. Well, I'll let you do it since.
Okay. All right. Ahead. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for putting up with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and get involved. We'll see you guys next week.
The American Justice Podcast is owned and copyrighted by Atua Productions, LLC. Your host is Scott Pogensee, and your writer is C. Derick Miller. The theme music for the American Justice Podcast has been created and composed by Josh DeRosa. Scripted and recorded episodes are published every Sunday morning, with follow-up Q&A episodes released on Fridays. You can find the Q&A episodes on YouTube by searching for American Justice Podcast. Atua Productions aims for this to be an interactive podcast where you, the audience, has a great amount of influence on the content of our shows. You can interact with us in several ways. First, and most preferred, is you can leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 972-942-0444. Be sure to leave your name and the city you're calling from, along with whether or not we can use your voice on the air. If Facebook is more your style, you can log on to our Facebook page at facebook.com/American Justice Podcast. Feel free to leave a comment, or you can message us on Messenger if you have a more pressing question or issue. If you would like to blog about the show, then you can log on to AmericanJusticePodcast.com and tell us what you think there. If you are a tweeter, you can also voice your opinion on Twitter at @AJusticePodcast. If you would like to support the show, you can do so in a couple different ways. First, consider visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/AJPodcast. We have different levels of support that include t-shirts, guest call-in spots, and early access to our podcast and YouTube shows. Next, you can like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get notifications of when we publish episodes. We would also very much appreciate it if you could give us a 5-star review. If you have any comments about the show, or more importantly, any tips on the case we're discussing, please call 972-942-0444 and leave us a message. After all, if the subject of our podcast is innocent, that means someone out there is guilty. American Justice Army? Let's find them.
Everybody, welcome back to the American Justice Podcast Q&A edition for episode 10. Once again, we hope everybody is doing well, staying safe, staying healthy. We have 2 more questions this week. This first one comes from Jennifer from Newport News, Virginia.
You know what?
Oh.
Hold on just a second. It's
Okay.
driving me nuts. 007 episode or movie 10 is
Like a steering wheel on a belt buckle. It's driving you nuts.
it's driving me nuts. I thought that was when the sea captain comes in with a wheel around his testicles. He says, "Arr, it's driving me nuts." All right, so this is episode 10, The Spy Who Loved Me.
The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes.
Never saw that one.
I never even heard of that one.
I'm not. That might have been a Sean Connery one. I have no idea.
No Time to Die with Daniel Craig in 20. Oh, it says 2020. Oh, so that one's not out yet. So
Yeah, that one's getting pushed back due to the Rona.
So there's been 24. So as long as we don't go past 24 episodes, we're good.